So now we're going to explain how we like to familiarize our athletes with the cone. The first thing that we do is, the first tool that we use is the grips. We make sure that they're facing the cone because we want the athlete to understand how the cone is pushing and pulling. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that at least the rope has gone twice. We keep it maybe short. We're going to make the athlete stand and start pulling and feel how the cone works. We're always going to recommend the athlete to get familiar with the cone. It's really important because if not, he's not going to know how it feels. So it's important for him to see and understand what's the strength, how much is he going to pull forward. And when the athlete starts getting familiar with it, you can start asking him to crank it more, go harder, then he'll start understanding how it works. All right, now we're going to speak a little bit about progression. So, as we already said previously, we want the athlete to be familiar with the cone. At this point, we're assuming that the athlete already understands how the cone works, how is it going to pull back, and what is the load that he's going to feel. So after he understands this, which is the first phase, which is just doing tractions without moving, we're going to start adding a couple of steps so the athlete gets more familiar with it. The second step we can add is add lunges. We want him to do lunges and come back. Lunges and come back. Maybe after he can start switching different lunges. That will be a second step for the cone. A third step can be adding some movement, some dynamic movement. So maybe he can start back and he can come with the cone and pull back and go forward and pull back and go forward and pull back. That will be a third step. Finally, what we like to do is that we like to add the belt. So it adds a little bit more of difficulty to the movement, and the movement is a little bit more dynamic. This is when the athlete is a lot more familiar with the cone and he can use it correctly. So we're gonna add the belt. Always looking at the cone. At the beginning, we want the athlete to look at the cone and see how it works. We're gonna add here. And we're gonna do the same movement, but we're gonna do it with the belt. So it's gonna let you pull, and you're just gonna come back. Maybe at the beginning, you can even add some marks in front of the athlete, so he can see where he's gonna have to stop. Just at the beginning, you're gonna keep the rope completely taut. You're gonna add 2 marks in front of him so he can see how far he has to go and how far when he needs to stop. Then you can start doing the movement. He knows where to stop. He can start cranking it. I know where to stop. I know where I have to come back. I know where to stop. I know where I have to come back. And that'll be a really good progression on how to adapt the athlete to the cone. And now if we want to add a little bit more of difficulty and we want to continue with our progression, we're going to start adding lateral movements and front movements when the athlete is not completely seeing the cone or the cone is completely out of sight. So what we're going to do first is we're going to add the grips. Without completely staring at the cone, we're going to place our athlete and we're going to tell him to get familiar with some lateral movements. As soon as he gets familiar with it, you can start, same system, you can start adding a little bit more of difficulty. Maybe you'll add a side lunge, a little bit more of movement. Then after, he can start doing more dynamic movements, make sure that he gets familiar with it. And after that, when he's familiar and he can do it easily with the grip, you can switch the grips to the belt. With this, he's gonna be able to do more specific movements from the sports, whatever sport he does. You can hook him up. Make sure that you know how far he's gonna reach with the rope completely taut. And you can add some mark as well. Make sure that he sees them. Here, he'll know how far he has to go or what mark he needs to pass. He turns, you're gonna start making him pull. Creating that momentum of inertia on the cone. Make sure that your athlete always keeps the rope taut. He has to be taut. Alright, finally, for the last step of progression, what we can do is we're gonna ask our athlete to do movements where the cone is completely out of sight. So we can add the grips. Maybe we have a boxer, tennis player. We can start add some movements without even seeing the cone. Add some movement. Make it a little bit more dynamic. And after that, when he's comfortable doing this, finally we can add the belt again. The athlete at this point, he's gonna know how the cone works. He's gonna feel familiar, he's gonna feel comfortable. We already have the marks. The marks are really important always because then the athlete's gonna know how far he can go. So in this case, we're gonna put them forward so at least he knows how far he's gonna be able to reach. You're gonna do a couple of turns and you're gonna ask him to do the same exercise. And that's a good progression on how to use the cone.